It's time now for the How We Felt About Christmas special. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life.
It should be said that I didn't watch this movie this year, but I've seen this movie enough.
So many times you
I
probably
feel like I could talk
a little bit about
level.
it with me. Yeah, and feel free to chime in and jump in and stuff. I've only seen this one time now. People are very surprised by this. This is my first time watching It's a Wonderful Life. I want to start off by saying thank you to John Early, who gave us a donation a long time ago to review this movie. He's the same guy who gave me a donation to review Miracle on 34th Street, and I did a rewind of that. Yeah, and he actually requested both of those at the same time. I'm now getting to this finally. It's been a couple of years, and originally my plan was to do a Rewind United on it. I am now, and I asked him if he was okay with this, and he was totally cool with it. As I announced earlier in the show, and this is part of why I came up with this idea, a quick plug for this. We are now, if there's something you really want to see us talk about, going to take donations for reviewing things again. And I've been really trepidatious about this because they stack up and I don't get to them and then I feel horrible. We have some old Rewind Uniteds from years ago I've never gotten to. I still have a list. I'm still planning on doing them. It's just written reviews. I haven't had time to sit down and get to all of them. And so it's a thing I shut down because I couldn't do it all. Mm-hmm. And but for the omnibus, I feel like it's a little bit easier because we're looking for material for this show anyway. So if there's something you really want to see us talk about, as I said earlier, in the omnibus, if you're watching the omnibus proper, and I broke that all down there, you can send me a message and do that first before you try to give us any kind of a donation. We're talking about one-time donation, not on Patreon. We will review a movie or sample a TV show, sample maybe a video game, depending on what it is, and review a comic of your choice. And I am doing that today with John Early with It's a Wonderful Life. So thanks a lot. And he's also given us some other things. We still have to review some Hitchcock stuff for him as well.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of stuff I'm very excited to talk about. So happy to do reviews this way as far as requests go. And of course, we can't take regular requests without donation that we'll definitely say for sure we'll do just because we get so many of them. We have so much to review as it is. So anyway, that's my spiel on that. And let's go ahead and get into It's a Wonderful Life. This is a movie that I never bothered with because it felt like such a cliche. I got so tired of hearing people growing up talking about how wonderful this movie was, and I felt like I'd seen it even though I knew nothing about it. It's really interesting. I couldn't begin to tell you what this was about except that I knew at all. Except that I knew that there was some kind of a supernatural component to it. I knew that there was...
So you didn't realize how many things you'd seen were riffing on that?
No, I had no idea.
Interesting.
I could piece together things maybe if I was thinking about it with things I had heard people in movies and things say where, like, there would be some sort of a dream sequence or a guide showing them a different world, and they would say, this is a lot like It's a Wonderful Life. I've seen that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And now that I've seen this, there are things that I might have thought were riffing more on A Christmas Carol that were looking at this first. Although I think this is looking at A Christmas Carol itself. Can we just say that?
Yeah. Well, and it's based on a short story. Before we get into what you thought about the movie...
Absolutely.
I saw this movie when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Where I had a similar thing. There were two movies, interestingly. There were two movies that we put on during Christmas. My mom would put on, and I would go out of the room and be like, this is boring, I don't want to watch this. And it was this and Miracle on 34th Street. And I've still never seen Miracle on 34th Street.
Brilliant film.
But
this... whole other level.
When I was a teenager, I was having a real bad time. I was in a real bad place. My mom sat me down and said, Eric, I want you to watch this movie. Mm-hmm. You've also not been in a great place. I think if you've never seen this movie before, wait until you're in a really bad place.
Thanks, buddy.
And then, I mean, things have happened in the past couple of months that have affected you.
One of my best friends died. Yeah.
I think the best time to watch this for the first time, if you've never seen it, is when you're not in a great place.
And you're kind of wondering, what is the point?
Or... when you're Batman, and every day is that day.
That's right, and of course, I like Batman's sentiment, and that's part of why we're doing this on this show, because this is this omnibus, anyway, is a Batman and Christmas-themed omnibus, if you're just watching the Christmas special episode, and as its own video, not the omnibus, but this is somewhat Batman-related in the sense that it's the movie that Robin is trying to show Batman in Christmas with the Joker in Batman the Animated Series, and Batman, and it's a tradition for him, and Batman doesn't want to watch watch it, and they get to the end, and he finally begrudgingly sits down. Bruce Wayne does, not in the bat suit. That would have been wonderful. Begrudgingly sits down. I don't think he's in the bat suit. I'm pretty sure. Or the in Wayne Manor and not the
Yeah,
Batcave.
they're sitting on a couch.
That would have been wonderful, though.
Yeah. But I think as Batman, he says, I hope it's not relentless.
It's not. I hope it's not relentlessly cheery. I had a similar sentiment about it, and I think a lot of people do. Where is it just that it's associated with Christmas, and that it has like a feel-good message, and you put that together, and you expect it to be
real fluffy,
almost so wholesome it makes you want to throw up.
Yeah.
This could not be further away from that. Oh my goodness!
And there's a joke about that in Friends when they make
Oh
Phoebe
yes,
watch
that's
it.
right. Yeah, which is hilarious.
Because her mom always turned movies off before they ended.
But this one you could keep watching.
And that one she never got to see, and they're like, "Well, watch this movie," because she's like, "Oh, all movies have sad endings." Like, "Well, watch It's a Wonderful
And then she
Life."
sees the drug scene.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, it's awful. It's what do you mean it's uplifting?" And they're like, "No, you have to finish the movie."
I like that because it is kind of the reverse of Bambi in that way, isn't it? Yeah, or not Bambi, because Bambi the tragic thing happens right away. But
Old Yeller.
Old Yeller, yeah, that's the one. That's
Yeah.
it's been a while since I've seen that. But anyway, I've never seen Old Yeller. Actually, that's another thing I've never
Really?
seen. Yeah.
My granduncle was the director of photography on that film.
Really?
Yep.
That's fascinating.
Married to the first Lois Lane.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, he was?
Yep. They divorced, but they were married.
That's that's the one also from the TV show, right?
I believe it's the one that passed away recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was married to her?
My granduncle. I've never met. I've only heard stories about he was director of photography on a lot of Disney films, such as Candlestick.
She was known as the First Lady of Metropolis. I met her. Yeah, that's really cool. Anyway, getting to... Wow, that's fascinating. Getting to It's a Wonderful Life. It's going to be weird talking about this because I'm sure a lot of people watching this are familiar with this movie and know everything I'm going to say before I say it, and have probably heard a lot of the praises and things I'm going to give this already, and it's going to be like, yeah, way to catch up, Cap. But I have to say, I had an incredibly personal experience with this, and I'm sure a lot of other people have.
I did as well.
Let me back up and say, what I love about the history of this movie is that it's it's kind of the exception that breaks the rule that we think that, like, there's a rule that we think is a rule that isn't really a rule, which is that the cream always rises to the top. And this is a case where that actually ended up happening. And we tend to think that's the case, but there are a lot of like great movies that should have been beloved movies that are like unfound gems and things that we just never go back to. This is this weird thing where when it first came out, nobody cared, nobody knew what it was. They didn't watch it.
Came out in the middle of the summer.
The critics hated it. And coming out in the middle of summer is not the problem, because it's not a Christmas movie, even though it is a Christmas movie. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But anyway, it comes out and nobody sees it, and it bombs, and the critics don't like it. And then years later, it's shown on TV, and all of a sudden people discover it.
Because it's cheap. The rights had lapsed, and so they could show it for free.
Right, and all of a sudden people realize this is this brilliant movie we didn't know about. And it is a legitimately brilliant film. It's nigh perfect. There's almost nothing I would change. And I want to know where this was my whole life. It's amazing. So I think It's a Wonderful Life is one of the greatest Twilight Zone episodes that wasn't a Twilight Zone episode.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. It's got the supernatural component. It has sort of an O. Henry ending, but a really positive, uplifting one, and not the way you would think it would be. Which kind of makes it
not a Twilight Zone episode.
Well, no, but there are Twilight Zone episodes that end positively.
I guess that's true.
And no, this could have been a Twilight Zone episode. Although I think if Twilight Zone had done it, it would have been more likely that he would have died at the end because he committed suicide and then looked down on the world in the afterlife and discovered that he actually wasn't going to go to jail. That's how a Twilight Zone episode that wanted to end it in a really sad, tragic way. Where that would be the big twist is, oh no, you didn't and that's what it is, but he gets to live, right? Where you didn't realize the positive impact you had on all these people, and why, even though you had to sacrifice your dreams, how important it was that you stayed in this town, and how wonderful your life is, even though it wasn't really what you wanted initially. And now once you realize, and what's cool is, I'm getting ahead of myself, but what's cool is it speaks to how great of a person he is, the protagonist is, that that he doesn't even realize the impact he's had on people. It's weird, he's like selfless and selfish all at the same time. We're like, he really wants to get out of this town. And I just think, I don't know, even though this came out in 46,
Mm-hmm.
Because it was right after the war. Even though this came out so long ago, watching it, it felt like subverting that whole thing and subverting expectations. Where and there were plenty of stories even up to this point, of course, especially in literature, about the this is just a real standard kind of outline for a story. The character the person who is trapped in a small town they always want to get out of and see the world. And this is the guy who didn't do that and shouldn't have and would never find anything better than what he has. Not because this town is so great, but because of what he's made it. And I think it's really interesting that the reason he wants to commit suicide is partly because, and I mean, he's a flawed person. He does bad things, but he's such a, but he ultimately cares so much about people. He's such a good person that he doesn't even realize the impact he's had on people, and he doesn't think he matters.
Well, and isn't it also he's worth more dead than alive? If he kills himself, his family will get the life insurance.
Yeah, monetarily he's worth more dead or alive, but it turns out that's even literally practically not the case because his caring about other people turns into physical dollars.
Well, but I mean, at the beginning when he's going to kill himself. But it's what I'm saying is, even in that, it's also selfless because he thinks, well, my family's going to get more money from me being dead than if I stayed alive.
Sure,
right
but there is also somewhat of a selfish component to it, where and also a lot of it comes from having a lot of self-doubt in insecurity because like for instance in the moment when he's again I'm all over the place, but in the moment where he's in that scene where he's just found out that the $8,000 is missing and he can't find it because old man McScrew's crazy angry face has stolen it and won't give it back to him, and nobody ever finds out that he has it. And I think that's hilarious.
It's like Wizard of Oz if he was a mean person.
Yeah. I nailed his name just now. I can't believe I remembered that. I will never remember that again. No, he gets back home, and he is angry with all of his family. He's kind of taking it out on them, and then even when he's apologized and kind of smooth things over, he's still making them all really sad and cry, and he's just beside himself. He's done. Like some of it is
I can't do anything.
He cares that much about his family, but some of it also is, despite everything, this is where I've drawn. Like, I wasn't able to get out of town, and look at this life I made for myself that I didn't want, and I can't even make these people happy. That scene got to me. As a like. I don't want to be obnoxious when I bring my own personal life into it, but man, as a dad and as a husband, that scene is hard to watch, and it's so well acted. Because like we've all lost our temper with our kids at some point. Like anybody that hasn't, I'm really impressed with you, and you should write a book because we've all at some point lost our temper with our kids, and a
lot of times it's not even really their fault.
No, I mean, much of the time it's not, and I can really relate to him in that scene. It's gut wrenching when he like screams at the girl for playing on the piano, and then and then he's like, no, I'm sorry I did that, and then, okay, go ahead and play again. I told you to play again. Like that stuff really gets to me, you know. And then probably the most heart-wrenching line in that scene is, why did we have all these kids? And then like it's great because it's all about perspective. There's information he doesn't have. And if only he knew how much that entire town cared about him and what it would be like if he wasn't there, he would have an entirely different perception of the whole thing. And the movie is so incredibly believable and realistic about the character study. It's a brilliant character study, where you have this guy who cannot see himself the way other people see him. And again, I find that very relatable. I like that. I like its take, and it's not exactly a movie about this, but to some degree it is. I like its take on destiny. The idea, and I've talked about this with some other things that I think get this right, when a lot of things like to use the destiny notion as a crutch. The idea of real, actual, believable destiny is to me, and some of this is opinion. I guess some of this is I'm liking this because it does it the way I think it ought to be done more often. But hear me out for a second. I like that this movie's idea of destiny is human condition and is related to free will. So it's about nature, right? He is destined to live in this town and to not leave it and to make it a better place. If the universe didn't want him to do that, the way it looks when he leaves is absurd. There is no place like that on the face of the planet, and this is not that heightened of a world, right? It's heightened enough that it's kind of a idyllic sort of town to some degree, or world to some degree, although there are horrible things that happen, like the guy in the drugstore, right? So I mean, like, I guess it looks kind of idyllic and wholesome, but beneath it, there's
like the movie itself,
deep-seated. Yeah, absolutely. So that's really cool. Because you're right. Like, at first glance, it looks like this really wholesome, polished, nothing can go wrong film, and beneath that is the grit of reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so the point I'm trying to make with the Destiny thing is he's going through his life and wants to leave and has all these big dreams he has, but his conscience and therefore his nature, and it would have been maybe nice to get something about his upbringing, I suppose. I don't entirely know where all that comes from, but I don't know that I need the nature-nurture question wedged into this, so maybe it's kind of okay that this is just how this guy is, and he's layered enough, and he's got so much humanity, and he is a flawed person. He is a real person that I don't feel like I'm missing it while I'm watching it. That's just like the academic in me going, well, you're supposed to tell me where your characters come from. But while I'm watching it, I don't need it. But anyway, so
because I guess his parents don't factor in really at all.
At all, yeah. Yeah, like hers do, but his don't. Or at least her, whoever. What is it? The aunt or something? I forget.
Yeah,
who it is
the one who's doting and
yeah,
and never thinks he's good enough.
She's hilarious. Yeah. But anyway, so he keeps getting in his own way to get what he wants, but every time he gets in his own way, it's for the right reasons. It's because he cannot help but help people, and I love that almost every time he helps someone, he makes a sacrifice. He's always having to lose something in order to do the right thing, and he hates what he's losing, and he broods about it, and not to the point where he's not a sympathetic character, although there are, of course, places where he gets to a really low point. You also see him at plenty of high points, and so it balances out, and you still care about him even when he's being a real kind of jerk about it. I had many other words in my head that I can't say on Geekvolution. And he, every time he does something really good for someone, he loses something, like when his hearing, there's a whole ear he can't use because he saved his brother, and that's the first really really good thing he does, and then he loses his his whole wedding day after he gets married to fixing things at the bank, and I love how that ends, where you'd expect his wife is annoyed at him, and she rewards him with this amazing dinner at the house they always wanted to have together, and so he'll have to sacrifice things, but then the universe rewards him later because he does the right thing, and he just has to be patient enough to be rewarded, but he doesn't understand that that's how the world works. And it's not just this cool writing thing where, yeah, it's easy to write a story where you give someone something because they did the right thing. The world kind of seems to kind of work that way. We are built to help each other. We are built to not be hermits. We do better when we work together, and when we live in communities, and when there is give and take, and when there is compromise. And at the end of the day, and this isn't true in every situation, obviously, and it's not like rich fat cats aren't getting the better of good people like this guy all the time. But at the end of the day, who's going to die happier? Who's actually still a human being at the end of the day, and who's kind of a monster? And I think it nails human condition as well or better than anything I've ever seen. It's fun because it's nice guys finish last, but not the very last. That's what's really cool.
You're not going to be rich and famous and successful, but you might be happy.
It's just wait until... Yeah, but then, at the end, he's showered with riches. So, like, yeah, maybe that can happen also. You know? I mean, it's not like he's going to live in a super lavish house or whatever, and he's not given, like, he's given all that stuff to save his bank. He's not going to keep all of it. But I'm saying that I think it is really important just how much money gets thrown at him at the end.
And that people are willing to do it.
Because at first I thought it was overkill. I thought it was way too much. I was like, this is insane. Like, they're going a little too far with this. At the same time, I think, you do have to kind of exaggerate it to match the exaggeration of how messed up the dystopian present is. That you had right before it, which is also pretty nutso and exaggerated. And I just, like, I want to think that the angel just went overboard with that, but then when they shower so many riches on him at the end, I'm like, well, no, I guess this movie is kind of that exaggerated. So I think it kind of has to do that. But I also just think, again, that it's important that that he realizes just, like, how much that everyone in that town means to him. Like, I do kind of start to buy into it.
Okay, so I have a question.
By the end. But anyway, that's kind of... that's the long and short of my story analysis with that, and a lot of the things I would have liked to have put in a rewind, if I did a rewind. Oh, I'm sorry, can I say one more big thematic thing? I just wanted to get all that out.
Yeah.
I really like the parallel events of George, right?
Yeah, George Bailey.
George Bailey. We haven't even called him by name. He jumps in to water when he's a kid in order to save his brother, and he jumps into the river to save the angel when he doesn't know that it's the angel. And the angel's pretending like he's drowning. Doing the right thing thwarts his own suicide, and I just love the poetry of he does exactly the same thing that he's and I don't know if the irony is lost on him that he's gonna the one person he's gonna do a horrible thing to is himself. He's gonna jump into the river and die when he saved all these other people, and it's the exact same thing he did when he saved his brother, which put him on the path of always doing the right thing, or at least was the first big instance of it. And it's somebody else drowning, where he's like, oh no, I can't, even though I wanted to commit suicide, I can't now, I still cannot break my nature. I just love that. I think that's fantastic.
So, this isn't something I necessarily agree with, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that I do know comes up in a lot of the Time reviews, the very critical negative ones.
You read some of those? That's cool.
At some point I went back and I looked at some of that stuff just to see why people hate it. A lot of people think it's too sappy. Or a lot of people at the time thought it was too sappy. But one of the biggest criticisms I saw...
That's really interesting, because I was surprised, and some of it's expectations, but I'm surprised it's not a lot more sappy. Because when you get to the end, like, yeah, it's like a real... It's a real super uplifting message, but, like, it got me. I bought it. I thought it completely earned it. If it's sappy, it earned it. Sap was earned.
But one of the criticisms I've seen lobbed at it is that structurally it's weird because the entire first act is all flashback and the story doesn't start until we get through all that. Do you have an issue with front loading with just this man's life to get to the point where the story really kind of starts?
No, I don't, because I don't think that's where the story starts. I think the story starts with the beginning of, again, establishing... I think you have to establish his nature. I think that's really important. I think it's unconventional, and I usually would frown on it because it's just not what's usually done, and it's kind of breaking rules, but it's really effective for the story it's telling. So, you have two protagonists in this movie. George is the actual protagonist, but the town is a second dual protagonist. And the break in status quo is not what it is, is not the second act with... I mean, what would you say is the first act plot point if the movie starts where you're saying it, or where you're saying they said it should start? Is it meeting her, or... Well, is it meeting his future wife, or is it...
Well, no, I would think... Because I'm assuming...
You're saying all of that is... Oh, yeah, that's true. Here's the thing. I'm not thinking about it like that, like the story doesn't start until we're not doing so many time jumps, because we're still doing time jumps even a little bit into that, like...
Yeah, well, it's parallel narrative. Like, you have to see all of that stuff to see what it's like without all that stuff.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's also really important, and that's why I say
my guess would be critics of the time think that the story starts when all the bank stuff happens and he's going to kill himself. That would be my guess.
It's weird because it kind of plays more like a third act. I feel like it's more of a non-linear story, where, like, yes, the movie opens with your hearing that he's gonna kill himself, but I don't feel like the story starts before the story starts. I feel like the break in status quo is he's in that town and is doing things. I feel like you have to see all of that.
No, I agree completely.
Yeah.
I was just curious because I know that's a thing that I saw in the contemporary release.
Again, it's unconventional. Usually, like, when I was in writing school, I had creative writing teachers all the time. That one in particular, Adam Denoyer, KU, a wonderful professor. Denoyer used to say all the time that it wasn't usually a good idea to span a whole lot of time, especially in a shorter piece, because of course we were doing a lot of short fiction. But, like, stories are about a break in status quo, and then there's an inciting incident, and a character wants something during that, and what happens. The more years you span, the more it feels like stories start before they actually start, or you're just doing a life story thing. And very often, a life story doesn't feel like an actual story. It's just a bunch of stuff that happens. This is where the life story is done so well, especially because we don't see him die. I think that's really important. I think the fact that we don't go all the way to his actual death really matters, because then the story is over. And that's part of why it does feel like we get a story beginning, middle to end. It does start when he's younger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. You have to see him go through all that, and you can't just be told that stuff. You have to see all of it.
I don't think so either. It's really impressive how much it's able to get done in kind of a normal length film, because it feels a lot longer than it is.
How long is it? It's like 90, right?
Is it that short? No. No, it's over 2 hours.
Okay.
It's 132, but
okay.
Still, it feels like a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and not in a bad way. It's really impressive that it gets all that done. I just feel like it's unconventional. It works. It's not even your standard 3 acts. Like,
yeah, it's a wonderful movie.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's just brilliant. I like I said, I feel really remiss in having never watched it before, and I feel really weird. Like, now, I guess it's cool because now I can come on camera and be like, this movie changed my life, and explain why. But it really did have that impact of I'm not everybody else, and I don't know what impact I have on other people, and I like that you get the contrast. It's impressive that the movie's villain is not drawn in any way, and yet he's really effective. What I mean is, he is a two-dimensional cartoon character. Mm-hmm. He's just this horrible person that runs everything, doesn't care about anyone, uses everyone as means to an end, and will give you what you want just in order to get what you want. And he's a very Lex Luthor type. He's a tycoon. We've all seen this guy. He's one of the better of them, though, of the two-dimensional, we don't know where he comes from. The performance is fantastic. And but I think it's really good that you get the contrast, because you see the horrible ways in which he impacts other people. And then, especially when he's Biff Tannen and he runs his own town, and it's the apocalyptic middle of Back to the Future 2, which had to have looked at this.
Yeah.
No way around it.
Yeah,
it was looking at It's a Wonderful Life. Glad I watched it for that, because I compare things to that all the time, and now I'm like, oh, but this is the progenitor to that. But you get the contrast where you see how he affects people in horrible ways and doesn't care and doesn't notice, and then or if he did notice, he wouldn't care. And then you see the really positive ways that this guy affects people but doesn't notice it, and it's, again, it does sound sappy to even say out loud, but like, life is really short. You only get one shot at it, and I don't know. I would be hard pressed to imagine that anybody would watch this movie and not, at least to some degree, feel like they mattered more when they finished it, or if they are really horrible people, go, wow, I need to change my tune a little bit. Like, I think it's the antithesis to A Christmas Carol in that way. It's the same story flipped, right? He learns all the horrible ways that he's affected people, but the way he used to be a good person, he can go back to that again. He's not irredeemable. But Scrooge has the opposite of this. Like, look at the way not only you've affected people, and obviously this had to have looked at that movie, like I said earlier, and the short story or this, whatever, but this material was looking at that. But not only is it you've negatively affected people, and when you die, you're gonna have a horrible afterlife. But it's also, and when you die, no one will miss you. This is the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fascinating because this is not a Christmas movie. It bookends at Christmas. It has that... it has that, like, the reason it's thought of as a Christmas movie is not just because it's set at Christmas, but because it has that Christmas lesson of, like, good things come to you when you help people and give and give of yourself. But it's not a Christmas movie.
Well,
and I think that's really, really interesting, especially because of how much it has in common and also is dissonant to A Christmas Carol.
It's my number one argument for why, like, people should accept things like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon. I was like, but It's a Wonderful Life isn't a Christmas movie. If it's a Christmas movie, then so are all of these things.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the difference is, and where I could see people arguing with you, is the message at the heart of this is a Christmas message, but I don't think it did it on purpose.
But I think so is Die Hard's.
I haven't watched that in a while.
Lethal Weapon 2. It's all about family and togetherness. I haven't thought about what those movies are about in a while,
yeah.
I think it's as much a Christmas movie, or I think those two particularly are as much a Christmas movie as this one.
There's still goodwill and...
Yeah. Okay, so I have a really minor thing I want to bring up about this movie.
Absolutely.
I've never had a chance to talk about it.
I'm sorry if I've been talking too much. I just watched this and I'd never seen it before.
Absolutely.
I had to get my...
It's a really minor thing that I've never brought up before because I've never had a place to speak about this. So you know what's weird? When they're at the school dance and the dance floor is over top of a pool.
That's awesome.
And they press a button and it like retracts, but it's treated as if it's just like we all know this. This is how all schools are.
There were probably some schools like that.
And it's so weird to me that you would put your dance floor over top of a pool and it would go like this. Like, you'd think people do that all the time. Just press the button, make people fall into the pool.
Yeah, the weird thing isn't that it's over the pool. The weird thing is that it's that easy to get to the controls. That should be padlocked behind 3 gates, and there should be a tiger in front of it. Like nobody should be able to get to that.
I've just always thought that was a really weird thing, and now I've said it.
But it's an economic way to build a school.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think it was a little surprising to me that in 1946 we had that.
Yeah, that feels weird.
That's pretty cool.
That feels a little advanced.
That was another thing I wanted to mention is that it's kind of fun that at the beginning it feels like you're watching a period piece and then you actually get up to its present day.
Mm-hmm. Which still feels like a period piece.
Which now, of course, is still kind of a period piece. But, all the stuff about World War II and his brother going to war and, like, I also like that not only does he save his brother, and that's just the right thing to do, but then that guy goes on and he... I hate to use this phrase because it's so overused, but he pays it forward, When I first saw this, one of the big things I took away from it was like, oh, this is really kind of, like, I mean, it's dark, but it's also, like, it's kind of risque. Yes. Like, I would think insanely I don't know if this could be made in the mid-50s. Yeah. I feel like there might have been enough censorship and things in place at that point that it would have been harder to get this movie out. Some of the jokes, especially like kind of like sexual jokes, things like that. I was like, oh, like, and it gives you like people, and it gives you a different perspective of what like real life must have been. Yeah, where you're like, you know what, they weren't that far away from us. Yeah, there are social expectations that are different, but when you're behind closed doors with someone that you're really familiar with, or you're on a date with a girl or something. It's not different. It's like it is. It's like it is with most people now. One of my favorite things is when she's behind the bush and doesn't and has no clothes. And he's like it's not every day that a man comes upon a situation like this. Did she lose a dress? Yeah, and he's got the dress. It's like it's not every day a man comes upon the situation. Yeah, it's amazing. Like, consider. It's amazing how endearing he is in that scene, and he doesn't seem like a jerk at all, a pervert or anything. No, it's very funny. Yeah. And a lot of humor in this is genuinely funny. It's one of the most romantic scenes, and obviously the like Last of the Moon scene is very famous, and that was in Bruce Almighty. Yeah, I've seen things from this movie in other things. He literally lassos the moon. That's right. Yep. No, it's a great movie. Which is kind of interesting comparing those movies, I guess, because you've got a guy who also doesn't appreciate what he has and becomes God and has all these powers, and then look at the setup for Bruce Almighty. They're totally looking at this movie, right? Oh yes, absolutely they are. Like I've never really thought about that. I think they put that movie in there because it was an inspiration, and there's already some ideas and themes and even story stuff that it's pulling from this. Yeah. No, you're right. I've never really thought about that. But anyway,
if you've not seen It's a Wonderful Life, you have been remiss, and you should also watch it. It is not just the harmless Christmas fable that everyone says.
And also, I should
like
mention, the writing is so good.
Yeah.
It's incredibly creative and clever. One of my favorite things. We didn't talk about the Angel at all, but I love the Angel.
Clarence.
Clarence says some incredibly creative and thoughtful things. Like they've really thought about what, I don't want to say it's like a big mythology they built, but they've really thought about what the world would be like if there were actually angels in it, and how the angels would respond to things. A couple things about that. One is, one of my favorite lines in the movie is when Clarence is in a bar, and he's trying to explain that he's an angel, and the guy says he doesn't believe in him. He's like, well, do you believe in angels? And of course, everybody's ostensibly Christian in this world, and he says, well,
it's the 40s.
Well, of course I do. And he says, well, why are you so surprised when you see one? I love that. That's great. Because like if all of that were true, that would be your perspective if you were an angel. Is, well, you believe in it. Like, you believe in us when you don't see us, but you don't when you do. And I like that. I'm like, yeah, you would need some kind of proof a little bit, but he's already provided quite a bit. You know what I mean? I think that's great. You also have this great bit where there's a whole thing about Sam Clemens in this, and he's like Mark Twain. I can always think of Sam Clemens before I can think of Mark Twain, and he says you should see the book he's writing now. That's amazing writing. That's really good. I would never have thought of that. Like, that's really good stuff. He's an angel. He's involved in the afterlife. He sees all these people after they die. You should see what he's working on now. Oh boy, that's good stuff. And in 46, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm overstating it, but it's that good. I mean, I think this is one of the best films I've ever seen. It would probably, at this point, it's probably my top 20. It's amazing.
It's great.
So anyway, thanks for watching the How We Felt About Christmas special. I am feeling it, and Eric and I are going to move on now.
But I'm also feeling. I've seen it before.
I'm going to move on now. We're going to move on now. Excuse me. I'm just going to go off without you, Eric.
Move along home
to more Omnibus.
Do 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 do